For those of you who may not know me, my name is Leanne Peters, and this morning I am representing the Municipal Edge. I am the editor of the Municipal Edge, and it's my pleasure this morning to facilitate today's session. At the outset, let me take this opportunity to acknowledge our partners, the Municipal Edge and Future Cities Africa, whose collaboration has made this webinar series possible, together with DUT, TUT, and Stellenbosch University. Indeed, investments into raising a new caliber of public servants is vital for constructive transformation, and so we are thankful for these strategic partnerships. This morning, I also want to just take the opportunity to wish all of our female participants a very happy Women's Month to you all. It is said that if you want something said, even in government, that you ask a man, but if you want something done, you ask a woman. So to all of you phenomenal women in the different sectors of the public sector that you are placed in, we want to wish you a very happy Women's Month. Truly, women are the authentic architects of society, and so we trust that even in the domains that you are placed in, that you will make a valuable contribution to building, changing, and transforming your community. Also, let me just do a series introduction. Today we are on part 2 of our 4-part webinar series, and we are looking, today's topic is digitization in local government, the IT systems in a municipal environment. So we're looking forward to quite an interesting topic with valuable input that is going to be made. And today's session is going to follow this timetable. We're going to have our main speaker that will contribute from DUT, and thereafter we have local government experts that will make a contribution in regards to the digitization in local government. We will also just have a time of panel discussions and questions. I want to also just make known to all of our participants that we do have a chat box facility available, so you are welcome to use that facility to raise questions or concerns throughout the presentation, and we will take some of those live during the panel discussions, and thereafter we have more panel inputs. I want to also just thank our speakers and panelists that have made themselves available. Really, we are looking forward to the wealth of knowledge and experience that will be presented in today's platform. And so we thank you for your time. I just want to do a quick introduction of our speakers and our panelists for today. We have as our lead presenter, Mr. Ebrahim Asmal from DUT. He is a senior lecturer in the Department of Information Technology, and he will be doing the keynote presentation. So we thank you for your contribution this morning. We also have Mr. Donovan Stuurman from Solvem Consulting. He's a director, and he will also be part of our panelists. This morning we also have Ms. Rebecca Gatangi. She's from South Africa Cities Network. She's a program manager in innovation, and she's also going to be part of our panelists this morning. And we look forward to the contribution that she will make. Together with a familiar face on this platform is Mr. Daniel Nolte. He's from the Center of Municipal Asset Management, the head of capacitation and development, coming with over 40 years of experience. So we're looking forward to all of these speakers' contributions. Truly, we believe that platforms like this make it possible for us to transform and innovate and really begin to make a viable contribution to growing the public sector and really beginning to bring about constructive change. So we thank you to our speakers and our panelists that will be presenting today. And also I want to take the opportunity this morning to thank each of you that are part of today's platform. We trust that from last week's presentations and last week's discussions that you are looking forward to what we will be presenting today. So we thank you for your participation, and I'm going to go straight ahead and just introduce our first speaker. And we're going to go straight to Mr. Ebrahim Asmal, Senior Lecturer from the Department of Information Technology, who is going to be presenting today.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. As I was introduced, my name is Ebrahim Asmal. I'm a senior lecturer at the Department of Information Technology at DUT. That's my email address and that's my mobile number. If you guys need to contact me at any time, we are open to suggestions. We are open to questions, or any way we can help. All right. So I'm going to jump right into my presentation right now. All right. So the topic I was given today was digitization in local government, the IT systems in a municipal environment. Okay, so when I looked at this topic, and I must be honest, I am not in local government. I'm just been involved in local government in the last few weeks, and one of the trips that I've done was to Budapest to see how their local government works. So I've just been involved lately in this area. So if I am a bit controversial, if I say something that upsets you, please understand where I'm coming from. And remember, you guys are from the inside, I am from the outside. The first thing when I looked at this topic, digitization in local government, it immediately raised a red flag for me, okay, coming from an IT background. And I'll tell you why it raised a red flag for me. Okay, so as soon as I looked at the topic, I looked at what are the phases of digital transformation, and I tried to figure out or understand where is local government in this sphere. So let's look at the first phases of this firstly. So where are we at local government? And I don't have the answer to this. You guys should have the answer to this. Remember, digitization is the action to convert analog information to digital information. Okay. Have you guys done that? Are we still there at that point? Or are we at digitalization? So digitalization is how, sort of minimize this, how technologies can be used to alter existing business processes. Okay, it is focused on cost saving, but the important thing when we talk about local government, can it enhance customer experiences? And the third phase is digital transformation. In digital transformation, this is the most pervasive change. Here, it involves a company-wide change or your organizational change. And importantly, leads to the development of new business models. So when I looked at the topic, it said digitization. So are we there? Are we at digitalization? Or are we at digital transformation? Ideally, at local government, we should be somewhere between these two. We should be creating or using new digital technologies that can alter your existing processes, and we need to make a change and develop new business models. All right. So the question would be to what I would phrase to you, and maybe you can answer at some point at a later stage, is that which phase would you say that local government is in right now? Right? I would prefer it to be somewhere here, but I'm not too sure. Are you still here? And if you are still here, we are really, really falling behind. We need to move forward, and we need to move forward very, very quickly. Okay, so this is more for me than for you guys. I had to understand what local government is, so we won't worry about cabinet, parliament, provincial. That is where we are concentrating our efforts on. Okay, our metropolitan municipalities, our district council, and our local councils. We know that there are many disruptive forces that changes the way local government works every time there's a new structure, or right now there's major disruption coming through with MECs resigning. I believe yesterday Ravi Pillai resigned, the premier resigned. So there's a whole lot of new people coming in, and this is going to be disruptive to local government. But we need to get them on board and basically work out a strategy of how are we going to take local government forward. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind. So what is the purpose of local government? Okay, I guess you guys should know this. It's more for me again. Local governments were designed with the purpose of creating in ways that serve, importantly, the general public. So what it basically means, service delivery. Okay, you are not in a position to worry about profits. You are in a position to worry about more about service delivery to your constituents. And how are we going to get that across? So the local, I looked at a local government turnaround strategy. Okay, and it's a program of action and blueprint for better service delivery. And look at your better service delivery. Just going to move this. Sorry. And it is aimed at. It is aimed at responsiveness, accountability. Important, effective and efficient local government. And the 5 focus areas that they have identified are, number 1, as I said previously, service delivery, governance, financial management, infrastructure development, and fighting off corruption. Now, are you achieving these focus areas? That is the question. And if you are not, what can we implement to try to achieve this? So, is this happening? Okay. And I did a Sigfaro conference, I think, about a few weeks ago. Okay. It was held in, I think, in Amstranga somewhere. And this is the same question that I posed to them. And their answer to all those questions is, yes, we are achieving those targets. And my answer to them is then, why are we having this? Okay? And my answer to them was, for me, from the outside looking in, you are not achieving any of these things. Okay. Why? These are simple examples that I've put on. For me to get a motor vehicle license, I got to stand in days in queues to get this. For my ID card, for my passport, for my driver's license. Look at the municipalities if I need to go there to query anything. Okay. And I put this down here as clean cities because I live in the city. I live in Durban Central. And Durban Central is a mess. We know what the problems are. Okay. Why aren't we developing solutions for these problems? Because I live in the city, and I think Smart Cities had a meeting with some people from the city center. I think it was the day before yesterday. I saw that on one of the groups. Okay. Our cities are faulty. I live in the city and I don't even want to walk in the city. Right? Why? Oh, why? Why are we getting to this point? Okay. Because we are lacking service delivery. Okay. And then I looked at the ICT policy and the white paper. And I looked at the aims and the objectives of the white paper. And this was in 2020. Okay. And I just pulled this extract out from there. The aims and objectives are in changing and transforming the ICT landscape in South Africa. And one of the areas that we will be discussing just now is the ICT landscape. This paper outlines the overarching framework for transforming SA. We need to transform into an inclusive and innovative digital society. It sets out the interventions to ensure all people in South Africa, regardless of who they are, where they live, or their socioeconomic standing, can improve the quality of lives through accessing the benefits of participating in this digital society. Okay? And if you looked at the diagram that I put out earlier, that is where local government comes in. You are the first line of defense. So therefore, we need a proper ICT landscape to try to address all the socioeconomic issues that are coming through. And the interventions that they speak about in the white paper, okay, first one, very important, interventions to promote universal service, that's you, and access, that is local government. Okay. From that, we will get, if we get this part right, all the others will then fall into place. Okay. Framework for building a digital society. I will talk about policy just now. New approaches. How are we going to how are we going to become innovative? How are we going to encourage entrepreneurship to basically build this new culture? Don't worry about postal services, that's not new. Okay. And frameworks to increase the ICT industry growth and transform our sectors. Okay. And to do this, we require new policy approaches. And that's very, very important. What are the key areas we are talking about? And these are the key areas that was given to me by Mr. Claassen. We look at local government and the ICT landscape. We have to understand this. Okay, I'm going to come back to this just now. Our key municipal data and IT systems. What data do we currently have? Are we using public clouds? Are we using private clouds? Are they efficient and sufficient enough for the IT systems to incorporate that into our data? We have to incorporate 4IR. Right? And government is now, the public government is now talking about not just government, but e-government. And the skills required will depend on which direction we take on these three. Okay. So what are the key building blocks for the strategy? We need a strategy, firstly. And we have to look at the digital technologies that are out there. And they are fundamentally shaping the 5 key domains of business strategy. And if you go and research this at Rogers, you will notice that he talks about government. Okay, remember this was from New York by Rogers in 2016. Okay, digital technologies are going to change how government connect with citizens and stakeholders. Are we doing that? It changes how government thinks about competition. There is going to be competition. How we think about data, very important. It also transforms the way in which government now innovates. And it will force you as local government to think differently how it understands, and importantly, how does it create value for us? And when I say us, I'm talking about me, the citizens, and obviously the other stakeholders that we have. Remember, we have private, we also have public. So these are the business strategy we need to use as our base. In order to get this done, we look at digital technologies. Okay, I call these transformative digital technologies, TDTs, or disruptive DDTs, disruptive digital technologies. Okay, and what are these technologies? We all know we're in the fourth industrial revolution. I'm not going to give you a lecture on the 4IR. That's a lecture on its own. But what does 4IR basically mean? Just basically means using technology. So therefore, what technologies are we talking about? I'm not going to go into each of the technologies. Internet of Things, very important. Smart meters, smart electrical meters, smart water meters, light sensors. Okay, sorry, I forgot to put it down here. Big data. You have tons and tons of data. Are you evaluating this data? Do we have AI running on that data? Do we have AI? Do we have deep learning? Okay. For all these technologies to work, we need broadband. Is local government providing these broadband services? Or are we looking at private enterprises? Okay. We're looking at 5G technology, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, robotics, augmented reality, 3D printing, machine learning, blockchain, very, very important, I think, for local government. And we should be moving in that particular direction. And I'm going to give you an example just now. So, how will we address these situations? And how do we make our systems more efficient? For firstly, importantly, for service delivery. We need to improve service delivery. We need to improve on governance. We need accountability. We need improved financial management for better decision making. We need to prevent fraud and corruption. We need to improve infrastructure development. We need to identify problems. We need to find solutions to these problems. Okay, again, we come back to the three key areas: local government and ICT landscape, the key municipal data and IT systems, 4IR and the meaning of e-government, and that is what the discussion would be around today. So when we look at local government and ICT landscape, we first need to identify what is the landscape. What are we using? Okay, are different local government municipalities using different systems? We need to evaluate these, we need to identify problems, and we need to find a unified solution. Okay, and I'm just going to come back to unified solution just now. Okay, what data do we have? And how are we using this? Or are we even using this? That is the question that I like to pose to you. Okay, what IT systems are in place to support that data? Do we have something in place to support that data? As I said, I'm in local government, so I really can't answer that question. Okay. How do we implement 4R technologies, and how do we use new models to identify and improve on service delivery and the other items that I had discussed? Skills required basically will depend on the ICT landscape, what data we are using, what services are we using? Are we using private clouds? Are we using public clouds, etc.? And therefore, once we identify the skills that are going to be required, okay, we need to employ experts in these areas, because some of your staff might not have the capability or not have the skills required. For example, in artificial intelligence, we need professionals in there. For the current staff that you have, we need to reskill and upskill our staff. All right. Now, what the example that I want to use to you is that I would like to see what we call a holistic approach to what we are trying to do. All right. We can't work in silos or in isolation from each other. Is each municipality working on its own? Hopefully not. So can we have a holistic solution to all the items that I discussed or the problems that I have put forward? Okay, about a year or 2 years ago, we were called by the Moses Kotane Institute, and the premier wanted us to innovate and create something that will resolve the service delivery in KwaZulu-Natal. Okay, so we developed a holistic system. And the holistic system incorporated artificial intelligence, chatbot, deep learning, uh, ways of figuring out how people to report problems, and the system to automatically determine using blockchain technology by point-to-point settings on how to basically try to resolve the service delivery issue. Okay, so this was an hackathon that was held by the Moses Kotane Institute. So we've developed an entire system incorporating all these technologies. Okay. We were placed number 1 out of 200 applicants that we put through, and we developed a prototype of what the system should look like in KwaZulu-Natal. And this is what needs to be done and be driven from local government. Unfortunately, that it never went further than the prototype stage, and because of government red tape and Microsoft got involved, and there's a whole lot of other things, but the entire system, that project came to a standstill. But that project had things like domestic violence reporting, a pipe burst in your area, how to report that using technology, and then taking over and sending that to the correct people in local government, thereby ensuring accountability. The system also had a way of working out, right, how and what it will cost to repair that particular problem that has occurred. For example, a burst pipe. And we can do this by using these transformative technologies like artificial intelligence, like deep learning, okay, like basically providing a better service or quicker service. One of the systems that I found that are basically working quite, I would say, quite well, right, is the reporting on, I think, eThekwini it is, by using your WhatsApp to report faults. That is the first step. But what's the second step? Where is the accountability and where is the responsibility of that going to take place? So we got to start implementing what we call 4IR technologies into local government. And by implementing or introducing 4IR technologies into government, then we can identify those key areas that I spoke about and try to resolve the issues that come up within those key areas. Right? As I said, I am not in local government. I am more on education side, right? And so those are the factors that I thought that were important for the conversations around that we are having. And I see it's rather important that I think there are 4 presentations. I think this is the second one. And how do we take this forward? And I'm going to leave that to you guys. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm over to you, Leanne.
Thank you, Mr. Asmal, for that presentation. We're going to go straight into our next speaker, and thereafter we're going to have a time of question and answers with regards to the 2 presentations. It's my pleasure now to call upon Mr. Donovan Stuurman, and he's going to also be making a contribution this morning as a local government expert that will come in. Over to you, Mr. Stuurman.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Donovan Stuurman. I am going to talk to you about MSCOA. If you've not heard about it, MSCOA means Municipal Standard Chart of Accounts, which was recently, or a few years ago, it was implemented and driven by National Treasury. Just give me an opportunity to share my screen. And at the time of the MSCOA implementation, I was appointed by the Western Cape Provincial Treasury to act as a program manager for the implementation of the MSCOA reform at the municipality, all municipalities within the Western Cape. And during this time period, we became the lead province on the implementation. And at the time of when it was needed to be implemented, we were one of the few municipalities that had fully implemented MSCOA at that time. But let's get into our presentation this morning. I'm going to talk about the local government reform agenda. I'm going to give you an overview of what MSCOA is and talk about the MSCOA journey, objectives, and benefits. And at the same time, I'm going to try and answer some of the questions or address some of the issues that was raised by Mr. Asmal in his presentation, because I think it's very interesting that the issues that he noted, that some of them are being addressed, although a bit slowly, but there are moves, it seems to be in the right direction. But I let you guys decide on whether we are on track or not. Okay, so if you look at the local government budget and financial reform agenda, I don't really want to talk through all of the words that's on the screen, but basically what we are saying is that there are requirements for this. There are constitutional requirements for local government reform. And we're quoting Section 216 of the Constitution and Section 168 of the Municipal Financial Management Act, which basically indicates that, there are people that have been put in place to ensure that reform within local government takes place. If you look at the reform agenda, the aim is to modernize the local government budgeting and financial management processes and practices, particularly with regards to budgeting and financial reporting, accounting, asset management, and supply chain management. And if you look at specifically around supply chain management, the national government have now got a national supplier database, what they call the CSD, Central Supplier Database, where all vendors who want to sell anything into local government must be registered on there, and there must be systems in place in local government to be able to verify that these vendors have been registered on the national database, and only once they are registered can there be procurement, or should their procurement be taking place from those vendors. Right. Another objective is to improve financial governance by clarifying and separating roles and responsibilities of mayors, executive and non-executive councillors versus those of municipal officials. So the aim is to be able to create a clear line between where your politicians' responsibilities starts and ends, and where municipal officials' responsibility starts and ends, so that there's no interference from politicians within the municipal space. Another objective is to maximize municipal capacity to deliver services by attending to issues of efficiency, effectiveness, and sustainability, and dealing with corruption. To set up the accountability cycle by ensuring proper linkages between the IDP, I'll talk a little bit more about IDP and what that means, budgets, SDBIPs, in-year reports, annual financial statements, annual reports, oversight reports, and audit reports. I'll talk a little bit more about those later so that you can try and get an understanding of what those are. But the aim that main thing we're talking about here is the accountability cycle, which all of these things form part. And the IDP looked like before MSCOA. So you had an IDP, which is an integrated development plan, which is a 5-year strategy. You had a 3-year budget that dealt with that. You had an annual implementation plan. And then you obviously have in-year monitoring to make sure that you are sticking to your plans. And at the end, you have stuck to your plans, and you have an annual report that does the same thing. And then there's obviously oversight. And then the accuracy of information depends on organizational structure, alignment to basic services, sound municipal policies, processes, and procedures, and then the standardization of the chart of accounts for municipalities. Okay, and then just from a legislation perspective, we have guiding legislation. We had the Municipal Financial Management Act, which was established in 2003. Then you have multiple regulations and things that happened post that. And then in 2014, the municipal regulations on Standard Chart of Accounts, or MSCOA, was promulgated in 2014. Right, so if you look at MSCOA as an overview, so the regulation on MSCOA was promulgated on the 22nd of April 2014. And what it did was it provided for a uniform and standardized financial transaction classification framework for municipalities across 7 segments. And I'm going to cover the 7 segments later on in this discussion. The regulation applies to all municipalities and municipal entities. In other words, all municipalities and municipal entities must comply to this regulation. Municipalities and municipal entities had a 3-year preparation period to comply with the regulation by 1 July 2017. This means that all municipalities had to have MSCOA implemented and active at the municipality effective 1 July 2017. The mayoral council, in conjunction with the accounting officer, was made accountable for the implementation of the MSCOA regulations. The regulation also not limited to a standardized financial classification, but allows for the regulation of minimum specifications for financial systems, and that's where the digitization is coming through. And there were minimum business processes that was communicated as part of this regulation. Right, so what is MSCOA? MSCOA, as I said, is a municipal standard chart of accounts. Standardization of this chart across all municipalities and entities in the country. So the problem that we had previously was that all municipalities had their own chart of accounts that they were transacting against. And what it created was a problem for National Treasury in that they weren't, because there was no consistency across all municipalities, they were not able to adequately report on what municipalities' activities were. And so there was a need then to have one standard chart of accounts that everybody uses the same set of accounts. For example, instead of allocating stationery to stationery, some municipalities allocated to stationery, others allocated it to consumables, others allocated to an AIDS Day project, for example, and so forth. And so there was a need to standardize so that you are able to see exactly where the municipality is spending the money and that they're all allocating to the same accounts within one standard chart. So the chart of accounts is a listing of all accounts used in the general ledger of a municipality or a municipal entity. The chart is used by the accounting software to aggregate information into financial statements. We said that MSCOA had 7 segments. 6 of those segments was compulsory and all municipalities must have it. And then the 7th segment was optional, which was the way municipalities were using their departments. And so municipalities are still using the 7th segment because it's important for them. No further breakdown needed subsequent to transaction posting. No mapping of data was permitted. But what was important is that MSCOA impacted on the main accounting system as well as its subsystems, for example, supply chain, assets, billing, and etc. The data must then integrate into the general ledger on a standard chart of accounts segment level. And the important thing here is there was a bit confusion with, at municipalities in that MSCOA was seen as almost as a system change, but in terms of the regulation, it was a business process change. And municipalities who went on a tangent and said, you know, we must change systems or we must make sure our system works, actually got into trouble because they didn't look at the actual business processes. Right, so let's talk a bit about the 7 segments. So we had, so I've just got this thing, I need to just move it out of the way here. So the first segment was, well, it's in no particular order, but it's there was a funding segment, or there is a funding segment. And what this segment does or asks is, it's wanting to know when you are buying something, where's the money coming from? Is it coming from your revenue, property rates or service charges? Is it coming from grants and subsidies? Is it coming from money that you've borrowed? Is it coming from reserves, or is it coming from other commercial services? So in other words, what it does is it says you cannot spend money that you don't have. So when you are budgeting, you've got to say, I'm going to be spending money, but I'm going to get the money from property rates, or I'm going to get it from service charges, or I'm going to get it from wherever. So no spending can take place unless you had the money available for that. The next segment was is the function segment. And this one is basically indicating who is spending the money. Right? Is it the electricity department? Is it the water and sanitation department? Is it housing? Or is it sports and recreation, and so forth? The next one was which was the seventh segment we spoke about, the municipal standard classification. And this one is just you making use of the cost centers within the municipality. The next one is the project segment. And this one basically is how does the municipal spending convert to deliverables? In other words, you have a project, and in order for this project to be completed, you know what the objectives of the project is, you know what the outcome is supposed to be, and then you budget for that project. So it's either a capital infrastructure project, it's either a new infrastructure or an existing infrastructure project which results in an upgrade or additions, or it's a non-infrastructure capital project. And then you add operational projects like maintenance and repairs, operating costs, and so forth. So what you would then be able to do is to say, I am spending money against this project, and you will be able to see what your budget was for the project and what you've spent to date on that project. And then the next segment was the costing segment. And this one is what we call secondary costing. So in other words, you will spend money in, let's say, electricity, but you are able, or sorry, in finance, but you are able to split that expense to electricity or the water department or to housing, just so that you make sure when you do tariff modeling that you actually have cost-reflective tariffs in place. And then you could do departmental charges and internal billings or activity-based recoveries. The next segment dealt with the region, which then allows municipalities to be able to see on a map, if you were to do it like that, what monies you've spent where within the municipality. So you could either look at your wards or your towns within the municipality. And the interesting thing is you would be able to see how much money you've spent in each region and what you've spent in each region. And then the final segment, which is probably the most important one, is the item segment. And that deals with what did we buy, what did we give away, or what did we receive. And so this is how municipalities have previously operated before MSCOA. They had the item segment, and the other segment they had was the municipal standard classification, and maybe the project segment as well. Okay, so that's what MSCOA is now. So what is interesting about this now is, if you think about the power that you have at your fingertips now, you are able to combine all of these and be able to get a lot of more meaningful reports. You could say, for example, in this region, what have I spent, and split it per item and say I've got, this is the revenue I've generated from this region, this is what I've spent in this region, these are the asset investment or the capital expenditure in this region, and so forth. Right? You could do a report to say from a function perspective, if I take the electricity department, what is the electricity department spending or budget? So I can take electricity department and I can only look at all the item accounts, to look at what income I've generated through electricity, what I've spent in electricity, what is my capital expenditure for electricity, and so forth. And you can do the same per funding source as well, to see, you know, for each function, for example, where's the money coming from for each funding source, what have I spent against that, and so forth. So it becomes a lot more powerful, and municipalities have a lot of data now available that it's almost like a cube that they now can use to take their data and look at it from different perspectives in order to try and understand get a more detailed view of what municipalities, where the money is going and how it's being spent and who's overspending and so forth. Right. Okay, so now we've spoken about the 7 segments. And then if you look at, there's a circular, I think it was circular 80, and there were some MSCOA circulars that dealt with this as well. National Treasury then identified 15 business processes, and the 15 business processes are on the screen there at the moment. And what they then asked for, they said that whatever system the municipality has, financial system or ERP system that the municipality has, must incorporate these 15 business processes. And this is what I meant when I spoke earlier about it was a business reform rather than a system change. So each system had to manage these business processes, and municipalities had to look at the existing systems and make sure that the existing systems are able to transact across the 7 segments and are able to incorporate the 15 business processes. And so what we found during this process was that municipalities didn't have the skill sets to review their systems, to make sure that the systems are able to comply to these requirements for these business processes. And what National Treasury then did is they created a transversal tender on which different vendors could then tender, and they went through this process and eventually appointed about 6 vendors that were able or indicated they would be able to adapt their systems to incorporate these 15 business processes. And so municipalities then had an opportunity to look at this tender and were able to procure from this tender to change systems if they needed to, or engage with their existing vendors to ensure that they become compliant to MSCOA and the business process requirements. The main aim of National Treasury is that each municipality must have one system that are able to do all of these things that are required by the 15 business processes. And so there's a push towards that from National Treasury's perspective. In some instances, you'll find that a municipality will have their core financial system, but they will have other, what we call third-party systems or side systems. And what National Treasury's requirements were then was that if you have a third-party system, that third-party system must seamlessly integrate into the core financial system, so that there's no manual journals that are processed in the financial system, but that the third-party system must feed the financial system with the data that it requires for reporting purposes. So it was initially quite a complicated issue, and as we dealt with the municipalities in the Western Cape, we realized that we needed to be a little bit more practical and on the ground with municipalities, and we had various sessions with the different vendors and their clients to actually work through these 15 business processes to ensure that that the system is able to do what is required. And if it were not, then a vendor would then indicate that they are either in progress and that they are going to deliver it within a certain time frame. And if they were not, they would indicate that they have partnered with a third-party system and that they will seamlessly integrate as required by National Treasury. And then obviously these 15 business processes had a whole lot of sub-processes, and we created documentation to make sure municipalities take stock of the systems that they have in place to ensure that there's no duplication of systems and that the systems that are in place are in fact talking to the 15 business processes. Okay, so just some general comments. The regulation applies to all municipalities and municipal entities. There was no exemption or phased implementation of the regulation. Compliance date was 1 July 2017. Budget preparation was done in 2016. I spoke about the 7 segments. Then there were minimum specifications for financial systems in Circular 80, and there were a whole lot of MSCOA circulars that dealt with it. And then the minimum business processes were specified. The minimum business processes will be regulated this year, hopefully. So in other words, previously it was just, you must have these business processes, but now National Treasury is going to regulate it, which means it will become law that they will have to have all these business processes. Okay, I've spoken a lot. I'm not going to continue there. I think the slides can be shared with everyone. But just as a final word, when we look at the accountability cycle now, we look at the IDP, which is a 5-year strategy. The requirement is that the municipality must have an integrated development plan that must directly inform the formulation of the budget. And that's what the IDP is about. So there must be engagement on the ground within municipalities with the citizens. And they must come back, they must have a system where they can capture all these unlimited needs and wants of the society that they are serving. And then a project would be identified using the project segment as a departure point in formulating the budget across all 7 segments. Then you add a 3-year budget and an annual plan to implement, and then monitoring that takes place. So each municipality must now have or has a budget system that they've implemented, the municipal budget and reporting regulations, and reporting to the local government database. And that's an important thing. Now, all municipalities every month are submitting their transactional data to National Treasury. So National Treasury has a single database where all transactions that municipalities have transacted are submitted to, which means that National Treasury has now got all municipal transactional data that they can now look at trends, look at which direction municipalities are going. If there are possible issues, for example, we've noticed, like in some of our clients, that you would find that the client has from a corruption perspective, the client has a very well-off bank balance, and then a new CFO starts or a new MM starts, and suddenly you see that the bank balance depletes within a few months. So these are things that are now at the fingertips of National Treasury that they can look at and then have interventions for those things. Okay, I've got a lot more slides, but I'm not going to continue. I think this gives you a good overview of where we are and what we've done. And the one key thing for me is that I don't think there's enough communication around MSCOA, because I think once people understand what MSCOA is and what it has done for local government, you can see it has created a lot of interesting job opportunities for people. The nice thing about it is that now, if you know MSCOA, the job opportunities are better. You can move from one municipality to another municipality if you have an understanding of MSCOA, because all municipalities now operate in the same way. I think that's it from me, Chairperson. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take that now or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stuurman, for your presentation. Really, it's been quite in-depth and very, very informative. There is a question on the Q&A that I think maybe you can take now. I'm just going to read it out. It is from Terence Orensa. And the question that he poses is, how many of the municipalities are using MSCOA, and what is preventing the implementation across all municipalities? So if you can just answer that.
Okay, that's a very simple question to answer. 100% of municipalities have MSCOA implemented. Not all municipalities are using all segments. So if I have to give you an idea, the segments that are the least used is the costing segment, which means that municipalities their tariffs may not be cost reflecting if they have not done that, doing it properly, or they're doing it outside of the system. Most municipalities are also not using the region segment effectively, which means they cannot report from a regional basis. And sometimes I feel there's no political will to report on a region basis. So those are the two, but all municipalities have a MSCOA enabled system. All municipalities are transacting across the 7 segments, even though on the costing segment they may use default and not the detail that's required, and on the region segment they may use the whole municipality instead of the different regions. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. There is another question from Terence. Terence, we thank you for your engagement in the session. And he asks this question: if National Treasury has access to all municipal data, Why are some municipalities still operating under insolvent conditions?
Another interesting question. Thank you for that. The fact that we have the access to data don't mean that municipalities are generating income. So you have to separate the two. I think, in my view, you have data, and what we are doing. Remember, we started in 2017. What National Treasury should be doing at this point in time is to actually look forward, take the data and say, this municipality is going to get into trouble soon, and try and put things in place to prevent them from getting into a space where they are not able to run effectively. But I think we need to separate the two. Data is data, but how municipalities operate and whether municipalities are able to generate enough income to meet the service delivery requirements is a different thing. You have to understand there are a lot of municipalities that are not able to afford the services that they are receiving. And so you'll find that a lot of your poorer municipalities are grant dependent. In other words, they don't get enough income from their own account, grant dependent, and they're dependent on national and provincial government to provide them with funding in some instances.
Thank you, Mr. Stuurman. What we are going to do now is I'm going to give an opportunity to our panelists to also just make a contribution quickly to in regards to the two presentations that have already been done. So I'm going to ask maybe Rebecca Gatangi from SA Cities Network. Welcome to our platform. Maybe if you can just share your comments on just what has been shared already before we bring you in to do your presentation. But if you can just come in now to just make a comment or a contribution on the presentations that have been shared. And thereafter, I'm going to give an opportunity to Mr. Nolte to also make a contribution, and then we will take a few more questions. Thank you, Rebecca.
I'll just switch on my video so you can see how I look like, but I will turn it off shortly. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel and just to have this conversation. If I may comment on the MSECOR, and I remember this project vividly. I had the privilege of working at Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality in that team that we at the revenue department where we were part of this project. And I think what's important for us to share is the behind the scenes that went through that project. It took a lot. It took a lot of effort. It took a lot of resources. It pulled across different resources from different departments. And what made it a success ultimately was the championing and prioritizing this, this project. And for local government or municipalities to implement a project of this magnitude in other areas, I think we just need to compile those lessons learned and the behind the scenes challenges or things that came through that process so that some of those pitfalls could be avoided in others. Also as a benchmark for other projects. I know each project is unique and can require different inputs. But those lessons are key, to take forth in other big projects, especially when you look at digitization. In local government, there is uptake, but slow uptake of such projects, and I think those are good lessons that can be brought forth. Commenting on the presenter who set the scene, I think that I will start with my session with that. Thanks. Back to you, Leanne.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm going to ask Mr. Nolte to just make a contribution on the two sessions, and then I'm also going to bring in Mr. Asmal after that, and then we will take a few more questions.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Leanne, for giving me a chance. I listened most carefully and attentively to the divergent subject matters that the main speakers put forward up till now. Take cognizance of the fact that Mr. Asmal acknowledged that he's an IT man and not necessarily a local government man, and I think that would complement what Mr. Stuurman was saying, is that he's more from the municipal finance side, the MSCOA side. That was his angle. So we are looking at two different aspects that we want to solve, is to make sure that municipalities have complete management systems that can put them in a place where they can fulfill their constitutional mandates. So it's not as simple as it sounds, because the constitutional mandates are, for me, the two most important ones for local government is the social and economic development of the community. That is something that is seemingly not giving enough attention. And then the other one is the delivery of services, which I think everybody is talking about, and obviously the communities themselves are bringing this to the attention of the authorities via protest action, etc., which is for us a clear indication that local government, municipalities are not performing the way they should be. But it's all not only on systems reliant. We at the Center for Municipal Asset Management identified 4 pillars that needs to be put in place to make everything work, and it's very much reliant on people as well, because we need supervision and guidance from a management team that are knowledgeable, and a political factor must be joined up with that to work with the technocrats. Then we need competent staff, on a level where they do the day-to-day tasks of feeding information into the system and interpreting that, extracting that. And then we need the business processes. Mr. Stuurman mentioned the different processes that are described by National Treasury in the MSCOA guidance so far, and it will be regulated now as well. But we need further than that. We need strategies from the municipalities themselves and policies in terms of all of that, to make sure that the procedure manuals that people follow are of such a standard that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. And then the 4th pillar would be, the systems that are utilized. The systems that are utilized is not only for financial management, and I think that is where the National Treasury have now acknowledged that certain of the systems can be supplied by third parties, where originally in 2016, 2017, the intention was to have one service provider for the whole solution for a municipality. But they have now acknowledged that certain things, like, for example, your human resource management, which is very much joined up with payroll, that is very difficult to incorporate that, because there are certain aspects of that needs other knowledge, other specialist areas that's not necessarily available to the normal financial management setup systems and people supporting those systems. And then the other subsystem or third-party system then where we are very much involved is on the asset management side, where you find that the physical side of assets, a lot of that is not necessarily easily identifiable within a financial management system. the physical control over movables, over infrastructure, the geographical information systems required, the other cadastral data, drawings, building plans that of structures, etc. That sort of thing is something that you won't expect normally from a financial management system to be included in there. So there are aspects that we need to take in consideration when we look at systems, and we look at making sure at all interfaces it all works together. So I think mostly the system vendors are still in the process of developing this, and I think as we are learning, as we go forward, we will all get better and better, where we can have systems in the end that will provide all the solutions and will be seamless right through. But there's that famous saying, rubbish in, rubbish out. So we still have to ensure that whoever is supplying the information, updating that and interpreting that all those people are knowledgeable. And I think that fits in very nicely with the subject matter that we had last week, where we were talking about upscaling the knowledge base within the municipal environment. I personally started with the era where, and my children talk about BBC, born before computers. So we were doing things manually. So I understand things from a manual basis, and so for me to sort of learn about how systems work, it was a process where I was. It was based on knowing what is the difference between a debit and a credit, and I think a lot of the personnel at municipalities now might have knowledge of how to perform a transaction, but if as soon as there's any problem or any question, any query regarding that specific transaction, they don't necessarily have the knowledge to correct that, and on a normal course of events, they don't necessarily have the expertise to interpret information. I think that is an area where we need to be, we get to be more clever, make sure that we can do proper analysis and interpretation. I think our focus must be not only to manage things, as they happen, but actually to use the systems and the information from systems must be used in a proactive way. We should be using that to do our management planning, to be able to manage our affairs. Some of the questions that were posed was regarding, the crisis that exists within quite a lot of the municipalities. There are some municipalities that are coping pretty well, and I think we should be using them as an example to say, how did they manage to get into such a good position? And I think you'll find that they are doing their planning correctly, and that they are proactive in their management, and specifically in financial management. Mr. Stuurman mentioned that some of the segments are not utilized from MSCOA, for example, the costing, and I think there's a huge lack of cost accounting skills in the whole of the municipal environment, and that is something that needs to be addressed, I think, as soon as possible, and it must be addressed in the systems as well. Systems must be set up to assist personnel to be able to do the cost accounting. In other words, to be able to calculate the recovery of the costing of delivery of services. That is very important, because it's not happening at the moment. A lot of municipalities are just expecting the grant from national government in terms of the DORA, the equitable share. That must cover for everything. And if they actually look at the allocation of what must finance, all the different expenditure accounts in their ledger, you add up all those that they expect to cover from the equitable share, then they need to get about 10 times the amount they're actually getting. So that's sort of management issue that we need to address as well. The concepts that we have in the systems are all fine, but it's the knowledge around that. And I think Mr. Stuurman said a lot of people have the skills to do accounting in the MSCOA formats, understand the standard chart of accounts and how it works. But I think there's a limit on the number of people. It's not right through the municipality. It's not in the outside the finance offices of municipalities. There's perhaps not enough knowledge as yet on how to manage the affairs within the MSCOA parameters and utilizing all the business processes correctly. I hope that I've given you some food for thought. And I'll step outside for a while and let you carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte, for that. I think, despite being born before the age of computers, we really appreciate the wealth of knowledge that you've just presented on this platform. Really, it's much appreciated. I am going to ask Mr. Asmal to maybe just come in very quickly to just, if he has any comments to make of what has been said so far. I'm going to give him the opportunity to just share his comments, and then I'm going to go to the questions and answers. Mr. Asmal?
Thank you. But especially the last speaker has made some very, very important points. And we are coming from different backgrounds as such. As I said, that I'm not from the local government, I'm more from the educational sector. And we are here to basically support and help the local government through our initiatives. And I think we have partnerships with certain municipalities, etc. And to try to basically, in certain cases, we looked at the skills level where they might not be at the level that they required, and we can develop courses around the system that you have in place so that your staff are basically upskilled and reskilled in those areas. On the financial management side, as Mr. Stuurman has explained, maybe one of the problems with the systems that are being rolled out, and I can't be 100% sure of this as I'm not involved, is that there needs to be in-depth training before any rollout. There also has to be acceptance by the people that are using it. And the one way of getting that acceptance is to get them involved right from the initiation phase. Okay, we know there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of disruption occurring, especially around the political scene, but that shouldn't affect local government. We know that the people are not happy. We know that there are issues. How do we now get systems in place to resolve these issues? And that is where I think academia, public sector and private sector can come together to try to realize these issues and then maybe try to find a holistic solution to these problems. I was just reading an article yesterday where the federal government in the US, and they have been investing very heavily in the local government, especially around IT infrastructure firstly. And with the IT infrastructure, they're also investing very heavily within the software systems that are required with this infrastructure to basically provide the services that are being demanded. Remember, it's not what you can only supply anymore. It's about what us, the citizens, are now demanding. Clean water, Electricity, we know there are issues with that. We are demanding clean cities. We know there are issues with that. I haven't seen around KZN really to the places that I've been, and I can't say confidently that we are doing a good job. Just by looking at Durban Central, I've been to Mkuzi, I've been to Pietermaritzburg. It's a mess, right? So what is local government, and how are we going to get local government to basically come into, or join the party rather, to basically try to resolve the issues that we know that it's all on the table. It's not rocket science. Okay? I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asmal. I'm just going to take comments that were posed on the question and answer chat by Salma Kukamore. And she's mentioned or made these comments. The challenges to achieve effective, efficient, and sustainable service delivery free from fraud and corruption are prevented by the political environment, government red tape, skills or staff issues and costs. And then she goes on to say that MSCOA was a move in the right direction, but unfortunately there are still many municipalities which have not fully implemented MSCOA and have not transformed their business from line item driven to program and project driven organizations. There is a minimal integration of systems and few are able to use the reporting options and interrogate data to reap the benefits of the initiative. I'm not sure if any one of the panelists would like to maybe come in and comment, maybe Mr. Stuurman, if you can maybe just come in and contribute to this comments.
Thanks, Selma. Selma is a former colleague of mine. She was the program manager for National Treasury at some point. I agree with Selma. I think the big issue is that if municipalities don't have their governance processes in place, they are going to struggle with MSCOA, because not all municipalities have embraced MSCOA. Although they are submitting the data in the required format to National Treasury, their systems are able to transact across the 7 segments. Not all municipalities have embraced it, and a lot of governance issues. And I think the previous speaker, Mr. Nolte, also talked about that a little bit. But yes, I agree with Ms. Kukamore. The big issue, obviously, is change management. And if we, as part of our implementation process, if we have not done proper change management, we would have failed, because a lot of people are resistant to change, and they did not embrace MSCOA. And so you'll find that a lot of people were left behind because of MSCOA, and they are now struggling in the daily processes that they have to do. In fact, now with MSCOA, for example, on our system, we've built certain things in. Previously, in the municipality, for example, if you didn't have budget, you could just pick from any budget that was available. Now there's security in the system that prevents you from choosing to procure something from somebody else's budget. You only have access to the budget that's been allocated to you. So a lot of times you'll find that people say the system doesn't work. But the system doesn't work because you're trying to do something that's not in line with what you are expected to do. So there's different types of delegations and access, functional accesses, and security is built into the MSCOA systems now that prevents people from doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But to confirm, yes, I agree with Ms. Kukamore that there are still issues at municipalities.
Thank you, Mr. Stuurman. We're going to take one more question before I call Ms. Rebecca Gatangi back to share her perspective. And the question again is from Terence. Why are metros who have the sophisticated IT systems not sharing their systems with smaller municipalities? Why are metros who have the sophisticated IT systems not sharing their systems with the smaller municipalities? Can I ask for any one of our panelists, if you'd like to maybe just respond to Terence? You can come in.
It's actually slightly different in reality. In reality, most of our metros are struggling with MSCOA from a systems perspective. because the system that they are using currently are still also struggling to be MSCOA enabling. The other reason why smaller municipalities would not be able to use that particular systems is because of the cost involved. Not all municipalities have the funding available. For example, if you take a small municipality, they cannot spend 50 million a month or whatever these systems are charging. It's just not sustainable for them. So for that reason, they have to have systems that's not as expensive. And the moment you go with these expensive systems, you also have to understand that these systems are infrastructure intensive. And if you don't have the money to upgrade your infrastructure, you will not be able to run these systems on that infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Stuurman. We are going to quickly do a poll that I'm going to ask my colleague Dan to facilitate. It is going to be a poll question, 2 questions that we're going to ask, and we'd like for you to answer. In your view, do you think municipalities are secured from cyber attacks? Responses could be yes, no, or unsure. We're just going to give you a few minutes to participate in this poll. Okay, so results, none of you believe that we are secure, with 80% saying that no, municipalities are not secured from cyber attacks, and 20% being unsure. Before we go to Rebecca, I did see Mr. Nolte. Did you have your hand up, sir? Did you want to make a contribution before I hand over to Rebecca?
Yes, I wanted to just respond as well to the questions raised as such. And yeah, for me, the issue of MSCOA not effectively implemented by all municipalities rests largely on the fact that there are not enough skills at the municipal level. And there, I have to go back to my background where I had to do everything manually first, so you can understand, what is a debit and what is a credit. You understand all these different transactions because you had to generate it yourself and enter it into the various books of account or systems or whatever. And I think that was a problem before we started introducing MSCOA. Just for municipal officials to understand that, including cost accounting, costing out from a department to others to enable you to calculate the correct tariffs that must be recovered to provide for a certain service. And then with the implementation of MSCOA, that was made so much more difficult because those same officials who had to previously be able to identify a debit and a credit for a transaction had now had to identify all the various segments for both of those legs as well. So it became very difficult if you don't understand the basics, and I think a lot of work must be done in that arena to make sure that people are being taught, being trained in the basic principles, so they can adapt easier to this. The MSCOA, the principle of having a standard chart of accounts, that is absolutely perfect. That is what is required, and it will facilitate, and it does where it's properly implemented and updated. It does facilitate monitoring by provincial and national governments, and it can be a useful tool as well on a municipal level. But there are those things that are missing now, that the skills of the people updating the information is not where it should be, and the analysis on a municipal level to be able to make decisions on how do we change things to improve that, that is still lacking. So we have challenges that we have to meet in those respects.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte, for that. It's my pleasure now to just call upon Ms. Rebecca Gatangi. She is the Program Manager for Innovation at SA Cities Network, and she's just going to take a few minutes and share her perspective on digitization in local government. Over to you, Rebecca.
Good morning once again, and just on this discussion, I did not prepare a presentation, but rather I'll just share my perspective on how we view digitization in local government. So bottom line, we agree that this process of digitizing within local government is intended for the good and to improve effectiveness and quality of public service or service delivery of service in local authorities. But it largely depends on capacity within local government, of course, to adopt such structures and processes within this fast-changing environment that we operate in, and also aligning that to the demands of our people or needs. So in local government or municipalities, for that matter, we have been affected by various waves of crisis. We saw the financial crisis, the recent pandemic that has forced our environments to almost be shaken and to adopt to the various new ways of technology. So from private sectors, we've seen that companies have transformed themselves, and we've seen the good that it has brought to them. But we are now calling on local government to follow suit, because by doing so, they can provide services that meet the evolving expectation of the people, even in periods where there's tight budgets or complex challenges. But it's also an opportunity to address bureaucratic challenges that exist within local government, create awareness perhaps about policies or programs, improve collaboration internally, because that is one big problem that resides in local government in terms of silo approaches, lack of integration between even within municipalities, within departments, everyone working separately. One system does not speak to the other, and so forth. And potentially revolutionizing the way in which interactions across departments could take place, and also an opportunity for the residents to participate in governance or administration reform and so forth. So there's greater appreciation and acknowledgement that through digitization or digital transformation and the quality of services delivered, they are intertwined. But when we combine emerging technologies with new ways of doing things, it can provide new possibilities, but also brings a lot of challenges. The poll just is a one example. There is the issue of security threat. There is the issue of uptake locally, and so forth. So it is important that these factors are considered. But for us to be able to do this and support local government in this journey, it requires attention from my perspective from two major considerations. One is, do we have the core capabilities for engaging residents or business? And do we also have the organizational enablers internally that support those capabilities? And this answer to this question could vary depending on the placement of where a municipality is situated, be it a bigger municipality or a smaller one. So we also understand that local government operates in a very highly regulated environment. And Donovan has listed or highlighted some of those regulatory legislation that guide local government. But from a public policy perspective, the digitization of administrative processes and public service delivery can be conceived as an institutional policy, which can be directed or geared towards remolding procedures or structures internally that those policies can actually find placement, or they can actually be implemented accordingly. If we zoom into legislation conversation, and our other speaker has talked about, let's start from the top, the constitutional mandate of local government, we understand that. But besides all these documents, I think what I needed to bring attention to this discussion is we have an e-strategy, the South African National Digital Transformation Strategy, which was adopted in 2017. And of course, the purpose of this strategy and roadmap was to guide the digital transformation of public service in South Africa as a whole. And that needs to filter from national, province to local level. And the intention, of course, is for an inclusive digital society where all citizens can benefit from opportunities offered by digital technologies and improve quality of life. And this strategy was aimed to position South Africa as a significant player in the development of ICT through the value chain, and that is what I'm referring, that goes down. But the question is, has this strategy filtered down to local government so that it provides an enabling environment for the other legislation to latch into it, or other policies like the ICT, local ICT policy or respective ICT policies in the institution that enable digitization process on the ground? Because in a municipality setup, as a starting point, all the time when there is a project that speaks to these, it has to be hooked somehow to some form of legislation that allows or permits such things to thrive. So to me, these are relevant things, or such a strategy, we need to see how it makes sound in local perspective. The likes of SALGA, for example, have come up with the digital strategic framework for local government sector, which takes into consideration a number of things, and the challenges the sector is facing, including the financial constraints, audit requirements, the urban migratory patterns, aging infrastructure, and so forth. But how is this brought forth in local perspective so that it can enable the rise of these projects that are technologically inclined in different departments, so they can see day of light in terms of in conception to implementation. But just to also highlight that this legislation, together with efforts on the ground, on its own standing alone, cannot thrive, but rather advocate for coordination or collaboration, or even build an ecosystem around critical issues, such that there is a efficient enabling policies that are relevant to specific institution, that are forward-looking. They can predict the direction in which our environments are taking shape. Infrastructure-wise, all these digital societies underpinned by availability of infrastructure, not just in local space, but across the country. and interventions are needed to stimulate both, especially in public sector, to make sure that when we are advocating for digitization, there is infrastructure in place for this to thrive. Access, in terms of affordability of such things, and the funding thereof, and encouraging the private sector to come on board and form those public-private partnerships to make those things available, and so forth. But for this ecosystem to thrive, we have to make sure that there is ultimate buy-in. There is the will, there's championing, the champion to drive this at a local scale. We have to ensure that there's a prevailing or enabling environment at local level. So if you may ask, in terms of the current landscape, what's happening, and some of the speakers have touched onto that, I can say there's enough strategy or visions or policies in place to guide this. We don't need to recreate this. We need to tap into this. But what we need to understand is, or give clarity to, is how can we build integration internally to make sure that different departments are speaking to each other, they're leveraging on whatever is existing, they're pulling resources together so that they can tap into one rather than implementing a number of projects that perhaps address the same thing even internally. Infrastructure wise, we know we are behind. These silos of good efforts that have happened, and also the private sector has enabled this, but also that could be looked into in specific contexts, different environments, to make sure that there's sufficient capital to fund this, and how it plugs into the bigger picture of service delivery. To me, what is a game changer in the whole digitization process?
We're going to go to a second poll question in the interim. So Dan, if you can maybe just put that poll up. Okay, the question is, do we have adequate ICT skills in local government? Do we have adequate ICT skills in local government? Yes, no, or the alternative is consultants blocking upskilling of IT officials. Okay, so we have, do we have adequate ICT skills in local government? 4% of you said yes, 88% of you said no, and 8% of you said consultants are blocking upskilling of ICT officials. So we thank you for your participation in that poll. What I am going to do, I believe that there is another question on the chat, which I would have liked to have posed to Rebecca, but I think she's challenged to join us back. But I am going to read it. It is again from Yvonne, and she says, I would like to believe that the panelists and speakers agree that it all begins with data to create systems. If I do research now on community award stats, I will still find 2011 and sometimes 2016. Why is that? Why does local municipalities not have up-to-date stats in terms of population, households, income, employment, or informal settlements, etc.? How can you create effective systems for transportation, education, housing, healthcare, even safety and security? I'm going to ask maybe if Mr. Stuurman or even Mr. Nolte can come in and answer that question for us.
I'm also a bit ICT challenged because of the BBC tag, that I have. But no, I think I can respond to those questions that was posed by Yvonne. The first question that she posed was, the absence of information regarding the geography of the different municipalities. I think that you will find most municipalities, they are supposed to utilize that in the formulation of their IDPs. So they must have updated information about that, because that's what you need to do when you do your planning, when you do your long-term planning on projects, on what is required to supply services to the municipality. You need to know what is the demand out there, where how many people are living where. There's no other way that you can go about it. And that must also be included in the annual report. I believe that. So these are compliance issues. Municipalities should be doing that. And those reports, the IDP as well as the annual report, must be updated on their website. So it must be available, if should you want to do any research on that on the applicable website. As far as the ICT competencies are concerned in the municipalities, we tend to look at the cities only, at the bigger municipalities in the cities. There is very easy for them to attract competent personnel to pay them full time to be there. So that's not and they actually have competency in all sorts of sectors, even in the engineering fields, all of that as well. So that's not too difficult. But if you go to the smaller municipalities, and you will note that most our municipalities in the country are falling in that category. They're rural and they're smaller. So that means two things. The first one is the communication setups, because ICT is very much dependent on proper communication. So in the city, you have fiber that connects everything. In the rural areas, smaller municipalities, you don't necessarily have that. So you have other means that you have to use to communicate. In other words, transfer information from one office to the other. So that is already a disadvantage. But the smaller municipalities can also not afford to attract full-time personnel in the engineering fields, in the IT fields, all of that. So they're very much reliant on service providers. And I think that is where sometimes the support is not of the standard required, because some of the service that municipalities acquire in that fashion is from people that are not necessarily knowledgeable enough to keep up with the trends, to make sure that we can actually perform everything that is required of a proper system. And I think Mr. Asmal said that they went to to Turkey and had a look at systems there. Yes, I know we had people going to even to China and see how well developed they are, as far as ICT is concerned. And yes, it's all there. It's possible to do it, but there is a cost. But there's also very much the knowledge available at local level is not necessarily there, and the communication that is very important. We don't have that set up for smaller municipalities as yet. I think the National Treasury, who gets all the updates of the the MSCOA data, the strings are being sent to them, they would be able to confirm that sometimes they just have problems communicating with some of the the smaller rural municipalities. So we're looking at different problems, and it's not necessarily the same solution is not necessarily applicable to the cities and to the smaller municipalities. We have to acknowledge that and provide for that accordingly.
some of the comments that are being made on the chat. There is a comment by Louise that says, I believe that the poll question is limiting, and that was the question regarding the skills, the ITC skills. We need to understand why those skills are not available at local government. A huge part of the problem is the pegging of the salary levels, and that youngsters are just not attracted, especially to remote areas. I believe there was also a comment by Thokozani Zulu, also in line with what Louise is saying, where Thokozani has said, I find that there is a long-term outlook regarding the hiring of people with ICT skills. Either the work goes to consultants or there is a hire, it is short-term or contract-based. Favorable salaries as well as the offer of a permanent position would entice young ITCs professionals to work in the local government space. And I believe that there are others like Selma that's also in agreement to the comments that are being made. I'm not too sure if any of the panelists would maybe like to come in and comment with regards to salary structures and expertise regarding the ITC.
I have some comments, if I may. I'm always popping up. I have ideas on everything, and so I'd like to share that, if I may. I think I mentioned earlier that the smaller municipalities just don't have the budget to afford to employ people with the proper skills. So that is a problem. But as in various other areas, there have been a sharing of services on a district level. So that is perhaps something that can be looked at more intensively. I think there's quite a push from the national government, from the president's office, from the COCTA, on the district development models to make sure that we do our planning on that basis a lot more. But I think there is possible benefits of using some of the scarce skills. Let's call it scarce because the proper skills are not necessarily abundantly available, and if they are, they're too expensive for the smaller municipalities, so they can share on a district level. I know a lot of districts are actually doing exactly that in different areas, like, for example, in development planning, using a shared service as such. So that is a possible solution.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte, for that. I believe Mr. Asmal is back with us, and I'd like to just pose the question to him that was raised on the chat. And it says, do you believe, based on what you mentioned earlier on how the university created a prototype for the municipality, but it came to a standstill because of red tape, do you believe that local government, even provincial and national, is ready or even equipped for 4IR and AI to transform municipalities? So you can go ahead and answer.
Thank you for that question. Very interesting question. That actually show how to answer that whether municipalities are ready. But I do believe that municipalities need to transform to become efficient and relevant. And it's the easiest way to address the problems that are arising within these municipalities. Would that come to the question again with staffing? Okay, I think someone also mentioned that there are consultants being used. I have a problem with using consultants. Because they inhibit growth within your organization. They don't allow your staff to be skilled and upskill and to grow. You need to grow a staff complement within your municipalities to be able to address your day-to-day issues that are coming up. And consultants are not in the best place to be able to do that. They are more concerned about how much money they are going to make at the end of the day. And something that costs 10 Rand will cost you 100 Rand with a consultant. So I am not in favor of using consultants at the levels where there's usage. You can use consultants for the development of the project itself, but eventually the municipalities need to take ownership of these projects. So I do believe that municipalities need to transform. They need to build a skill set. They need to build, upskill and reskill their own staff to be able to address the issues around 4IR. Thank you. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, sir. We have one more question from Terence, and he's posing a question to all the panelists. In the panel's opinion, what are the 3 key factors in their areas of expertise required to transform local government? Let me just say that again. In the panelists' opinion, what are the 3 key factors in their areas of expertise required to transform local government? So can I ask Mr. Nolte and Mr. Asmal to come in? I believe, Mr. Stuurman, if you are still with us, you can also just answer before you leave, sir. I see that you are still on.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
can
I'm barely holding on. I think I have one view from my side, and that is political will.
Political will. Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask Mr. Asmal and Mr. Nolte also to just come in.
From my side, I think a political will is very, very important. I agree with Mr. Stuurman there. Also believe within the municipality itself, data is absolutely critical. And how are you collecting this data? And how are you providing your services to, how are you using data to provide efficient services to your constituents?
I've just enabled myself, Leanne, because you mentioned my name. We are of the opinion that the crux of making a municipality efficient is lying in the assets, because if you look at the constitutional mandate, and if you look at what is required in terms of the schedules, it's, a service delivery is a very important part of that, and the tool that the tools that you require for service delivery are assets. So if you consider that, then you think, okay, that's the critical aspect. What has happened over the last 2 decades, perhaps, is that there was not sufficient planning done around assets. I think, our situation with Eskom, for example, is one very good example of planning not being performed, and when there was planning, it was not implemented. So I think that is a critical factor at this stage, is that we must have a proper look at our assets, what we have, match that up with what services must be supplied, and then look at the conditions of the assets, and then do proper planning to rehabilitate those assets that are now not up to standard, that are not supplying the services, before we actually proceed with adding more assets to our whole pocket, then full of assets that we must operate and maintain. I think Rebecca made a very good comment, and I fully agree with that, is that in the municipal environment, and actually it's in all government spheres, it's actually true, that we have a silo mentality where every department is sort of doing their own thing. They have their own little kingdoms, and we cannot carry on like that. You have to say the management teams must come together as a team, and I think we have a problem in filling all the posts. At a lot of municipalities, there are just actors in the positions, so that doesn't help. But I think on a long-term view, we must look at having the posts filled with appropriately qualified people, and they must actually work together as a team. And we must, and all knowledgeable people that can assist, and that includes all government departments and all the other bodies like Salga and Sigforo, must make the effort to ensure that they are capacitated as a team. In other words, your engineer must have an understanding of finance, must have a good understanding of, where are we going, in the future. And then those teams must actually develop the strategies and the plans that they can lay before their political masters, the councils, to say, this is what we can do, this is what we're allowed to do within the legislative requirements. This is what we as a management team, based on the knowledge that we have, the practical background and qualifications we have, this is what we propose that should be happening here as far as the strategy is concerned, the policies for every sector within the municipality, and describe that properly like that. That is where we are now. That for me is what we should do first before anything else. Is plan properly, document that, and make sure that we get a political buy-in for that, because that will ultimately also save the politicians. Because at the moment the communities are very, very unhappy. And as we know, the communities will not protest if they are happy. They want better than what they are receiving at the moment. So we must improve, but working together and planning properly. That is what I would say.
Thank you for that, sir. I'm going to give an opportunity to Selma Kukumo as well. She's making some quite constructive comments on the chat, but I want to give her this opportunity maybe just to share live some of her comments. And if there is a question that she'd like to pose, she can do so. Selma, over to you.
Thank you very much for upgrading my status. I appreciate it, and thanks for the active participation. You must have noticed that this is a topic which is very, very close to my heart, and hence my active participation. In terms of the barriers that I experience, and I stand with my foot in two areas. One is I am a municipal finance system consultant, and the other is that I'm also an academic. The first thing that I find a barrier in municipalities is the political environment in which we operate. The reason for that is that in terms of the constitution, every municipality is independent, and the politicians often emphasize that when a person introduces topics like sharing, transferring skills between borders, assisting each other, using the same systems or even the same lessons learned from municipality to municipality, there's a dead stop normally when we get to that point. And I think that is partially also due to our culture. We don't want to learn from others, and we don't want to share with others, which I think is very detrimental in terms of digitization of government as a whole, and not only local government. The second issue that I want to raise is red tape. In terms of red tape, the average municipality, and I know every person that's representing a municipality here is probably from one of the better municipalities, but the average time for procurement in municipalities is between 3 and 9 months for a single procurement initiative. And if a person looks at red tape, I also want to include academics, and I know I'm treading on the toes of Mr. Asmal. I'm also treading on my own toes. The time it takes to get a curriculum approved by the higher education authorities and rolled out to students is detrimental to agility and learning in terms of technology. And then also, if we look at the accreditation of training, most municipalities are forced to only utilize accredited training. To get training accredited, also there's quite a time lapse, sometimes up to a year. So just those examples of red tape are hampering the digitization of municipalities, because the whole spirit of development in digitization is fast-tracked. It's happening day by day. So we find when students exit formal training, what they learned already is outdated. And that is one of the challenges we sit with. I think Mr. Nolte also mentioned several of us that are online here and participating date back from pre-technology, and we had to grow with the technology, but of our own accord, because you cannot wait for formal training, formal education, formal skills development. And I've made several comments in terms of skills development as well. The structures are very rigid at municipalities. The salary scales are very rigid, and we find that young technology skilled individuals rather want agility and flexibility. They want to move from project to project. They want to move from new initiative to new initiative. They want their salaries to grow as their knowledge and their experience grows, and local government structures don't allow for that. We also have a major problem, I believe, with unionization in municipalities. So when you come with reskilling, upskilling, redeploying of resources, you get hampered by the unions in the environment. And that is detrimental. We also focus on the IT skills of the IT department and forget that every user of IT needs upskilling, not only in terms of understanding the technology that you are using, but also understanding the broader implications of what you are using. What regulations and legislation are applicable? How should you move from the one environment to the other? And everything that you are doing on IT, how it is affecting other people within your organization, but also the bottom line of your own organization. And people don't understand that. They focus just on what they have to do to get their specific tasks completed and completely forget the bigger picture. And you find that there are of the people in municipalities that don't want to learn new skills. Very often I sit with people and I try and develop a digitization strategy for municipalities, and some of the more, can I say, experienced resources will tell me, listen here, before you get to implementing all your clever ideas, I will rather go on pension than go with you with all these crazy ideas you're bringing. So those are of the challenges we have to deal with. And then, of course, we have mentioned cost already. Cost is prohibitive. And if you sit at a municipality and say you're going to spend 10 million, 20 million, 30 million on improving the technology in your organization, the first question they will ask is, how is that going to improve service delivery? How is that going to translate into a benefit to the community? Because if I have to select between providing water, providing electricity, fixing up the degrading infrastructure, and implementing new technology, I've got to come with a very, very sound business case to get that approved. And where we are in very financial constrained situation currently, you find that it's very difficult to motivate investment in technology. And one of the challenges with the motivation is that most municipalities have the idea, when my system goes live, the project ends, or when I get a green status from National Treasury for my data submission, then I've achieved what I have to. And that's not the case. You have to sweat your asset, you have to work the return on investment to actually embrace the return on investment. And most municipalities don't continue the effort after the implementation. They stop at go live and think, now we've achieved our goals. And that is why there's an aversion to large implementations at this point in time, because financially, as a country and as municipalities, we cannot afford it. So those are just in short what I believe to be key stumbling blocks in our way to digitization. Thanks, Leanne, and thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Selma. That was quite an excellent contribution that you've made on this platform. So much appreciation to you for that. What I am going to do now, colleagues, is I'm going to allow for our panelists to just do their closing remarks. I'm going to ask Mr. Nolte and Mr. Aslam to just round off the session and, just your last closing remarks. And then please note that all presentations will be circulated to you, and we have noted all your comments, and we look forward to growing from these kind of sessions. So Mr. Nolte and Mr. Aslam, please, sirs, can you go and make your closing remarks? We can do Mr. Aslam first and then Mr. Nolte. Thank you, sir.
Firstly, thank you guys for a wonderful session. It's been an eye-opener for myself. As I said from the beginning, I'm from the outside looking in. A few things that I picked up on that I think is really a sore point for some of the people. Selma, I totally agree with you when you say it takes ages to get a qualification done. Just to let people know, if you want to apply for a new qualification, a degree or a diploma, it takes about 3 to 5 years to get it done. And in the IT industry, that is too long. By that time, we've already missed the boat. The way around that, that is the formal qualification. The way around that is I would like to see more short courses being introduced. Okay, that's one way of circumventing or upskilling and reskilling staff around local government, and not only around local government, it's for the general public as well. The other thing that I've noticed is that a lot of people picked up on cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is absolutely critical. Yes, we are going to get hacked, and we're going to get hacked every day. One of my major international suppliers, who I use a lot of content, you might know the company called Cisco, was hacked this week. So we have a problem with Cisco connections right now. So nobody's protected from being hacked. In this regard, we've created what we call a cybersecurity course. Okay. Right now we're working through the nationals, the NSG, and it is for government employees to try to make them aware around the fields of cybersecurity. And I think that's one of the topics that needs to be introduced within these seminars that you guys are presenting, and it's very, very important. And the other one was really around skills development. Yes, there are inhibiting factors. I couldn't understand when Selma said that unions do not allow training for individuals, and as she's put that up here, I really can't understand why they would do something like that, but maybe there's lack of communication. But we need to address these issues and try to find some sort of solutions to these particular problems. A lot of the courses that can be developed can be offered free, can be offered online, can be done over weekends, and is basically about, hey, let's get out there and let's train our people. That's the only way we're going to get things right. The only way we're going to get people involved on the ICT sector and become more efficient in the jobs that they are performing. Again, thank you so much for having me. It's been an eye-opener for myself once again, and I wish you guys all the luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asmal. Mr. Nolte, can you come in, sir, and just do your closing remarks, and then we will end today's session.
Thank you, Leanne. Yeah, it's been most interesting. I like the idea that we had somebody from the outside looking in, like Mr. Asmal said. He's looking at purely from the IT perspective, looking at the digitization that we have to catch up with. I think a lot of municipalities now, specifically with the implementation of MSCOA and the business processes, as Mr. Stuurman so referred to, is that a lot of municipalities have actually made quite a lot of progress in implementing the processes, because they all had to use the vendors that had skilled personnel. To do that. So a lot of municipalities really improve as far as that's concerned. But having looked at a lot of municipalities in KZN, because I was advising the provincial treasury on asset management at municipalities for a couple of years. So I had a look at the systems that were in use and how it actually copes with what is required on the outside, and there's a lot still to be done. And I think the competition between the various suppliers of systems would actually assist going forward in this. But I think the regulations that's coming from National Treasury now might actually also guide a lot of that going forward in making sure that we get all the processes correct. I am very much from the asset management, the municipal asset management area. That is my preferred area of expertise, although historically I come from total financial management, but over 20 years ago I converted to specialize in asset management, and there's a lot to be done in that arena. And there are quite a lot of third-party providers now at municipalities because they have the expertise, but their systems are not necessarily seamlessly interfacing with their financial management solutions. But there are other areas in the systems that are not there that should actually interface with the financial systems as well as the asset systems. For example, the planning modules that should be in place, spatial development, IDPs, all of that should be linked. There should be seamless integration of that as well. The maintenance plans, that part of that, the responses to and somebody mentioned that you can actually log in, when there's I think Mr. Stuurman mentioned that some of the systems allow that. We can log in if there's a water leak or there's a problem with some of the infrastructure. That must be seamlessly integrated and create a job card, etc. That we're not there as yet. Most municipalities are not even close to that. So there's quite a lot of development that must happen, and I think the preferred service providers, and a lot of them are still in place, should take cognizance of that and make it their task to ensure that is developed and it is available then even to the smaller municipalities. I think the question regarding the cities, they also have problems with their systems, but the fact of the matter is that smaller municipalities can't even afford the runtime of the operating systems that is running at the bigger municipalities, or at the cities then. So there's no ways that they can make use of that, and there's no need really for that. There are other solutions out there. What is good for me is that over the last couple of years, we have started looking from a national perspective at IT in a different light, where one of the things that was added to the category of assets was IT infrastructure, which was not previously recognized as a separate asset category or class of assets. It was just computer equipment. But we've now recognized that, and we are spending quite a lot of money on that, on improving that. The municipalities, obviously the bigger cities, are spending a lot more. It's just to improve the connectivity, the communication part of the ICT industry. That is one where we still have to make a lot of progress to get that fully operable in the future. For example, a lot of the municipalities have depots or offices in different towns. So you don't necessarily need to have a delay in communication. We should have instant communication, between all of them in whatever fashion. At the moment, we have problems with our networking, as far as electricity supplies, and that side of it is concerned, because a lot of time the cell networks are not even up and running in certain areas. So we need to improve that. But I think we just have to keep on working at it and change. And Mr. Asmal has made the comment is that we must change people's perceptions as well. The attitude, the perceptions of people, as you say, let's make sure that we can create systems that can facilitate our control, that we can make sure that we're not reliant on systems, but that we use them to make sure that we get better at what we're doing. I've seen in the past where municipalities made the decision to change the financial management system because they decided their problems are, reliant on the system, and we'll put in a new system and the problems will disappear. No, it's, you still have to manage your affairs properly, whatever system and in whichever format you use that. So that is important. And I think the spread, the capacitation, the institutional capacitation must increase manifold. And I was glad to see the National School of Government also contributing here at this level, and I'm glad to see the universities also getting involved to say let's capacitate people, let's train them. One thing that it boggles my mind is if you look at the balance sheet of any municipality, and you will see the biggest number on there is non-current assets, fixed assets. Assets is the only tool with which we can supply services. And if you look at the curriculum of the National School of Government, as well as all the universities, there is no specific courses in asset management. And I think that is something that we need to address very shortly.
Thank you for those comments and contribution. Colleagues, we've come to the end of today's session. I want to thank our speakers and panelists for their contribution to today's session. Truly, it was a very, very valuable input that has caused us as colleagues, as delegates, to improve, to upgrade, to upskill, and to advance. And so we thank you for the comments. We thank you also to the participants on today's platform. You've also contributed to good discussions, so we thank you for the contributions that you've made. We look forward to seeing you all here next week, Friday, same time at 9 o'clock. And next week's session is going to be discussing innovations and smart cities. So we look forward to that. And we thank you all once again for your participations, and to our partners, Municipal Edge and Future Cities Africa, for making this platform available. We thank you for that, and do enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we trust that you will take what you've gleaned from these sessions and go back and make changes even in the different municipalities that you are placed in. So thank you once again. We have come to the end of today, and we will see you all next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.